I just want to make sure that you believe that Allah does not reject being a father in the metaphorical sense. So are you saying that there's nowhere in the Quran where the Jews and Christians are referring to themselves as the children of Allah, and he rejects that claim?
Okay, perfect. So that's actually interesting. I was going to mention in Surah 5, where they are calling themselves children of Allah. What's interesting is that in the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, he details what type of rejection this is. He is rejecting it in the incorrect senses.
And what type of incorrect sense would that be? Because the Jews had never addressed God as their father in any sense that was incorrect. It's never happened in history. So this is a lie. You see, what happened was that when they wrote the Quran and they realized that there is a verse that says that, then they realized also that the Jews almost all the time refer to God as father. Then they had to come up with an explanation to why that verse was revealed, that if they called God father in the incorrect sense, when that never happened, that has never been a problem. That has never happened. There's no time in the history of the Jews that they refer to God as father and in the sense that was incorrect. That is false. That is the Quran trying to find a way to escape its falsehood.
However, I want to answer the question that you had, because you asked, are you affirming that Allah is not rejecting that he's a father in the metaphorical sense? I believe that the title father is something that could have been used in previous times, and you can make a very probable case for that. However, I believe that due to progression of the term's meaning and it being ascribed with false meanings, such as the one that I mentioned, which is the son proceeding from the essence of God, it was thus abrogated as a title that was capable of being used. For example, we have in the Old Testament where God abrogates the title Baal from himself. And the reason why...
Nope.
Wait, so he doesn't say that you can no longer call him Baal?
Where does he say that?
In the Old Testament. There's
abrogation, first of all.
What is abrogation?
Can you answer my question?
Abrogation, Korra, is this. Jesus Christ, how does this lady read the Bible at all? When God come up with a particular rule, and later on God says, well, I'm bringing another rule that supersedes that rule, and therefore that rule no longer applies, or that law no longer applies. That is abrogation. But this Baal thing, it wasn't God that explicitly instructed the Jews to call him Baal. It was the Jews themselves that tried to call him Baal. And so God said, this name that you're trying to give to me, even though it means master, I don't want it, because the same word is used for the pagan god. So therefore, do not use the same word, but use a different word that means my husband, but it is not Baal. And so this is not abrogation, because it wasn't God that instructed them to call him Baal in the first place. It was they themselves that were calling God Baal, because it just simply means master or Lord. So this is not an abrogation. She knows nothing. She thinks she knows something.
Where you quoted our. She just agreed that the verse is there. You agree that he abrogates the name Baal, the title Baal from himself, and not only does she that shows that God is capable of, if a meaning of a term or a title is skewed, he can disallow the people from using it and give them a better title. For example, in Isaiah,
on both points. Let me address what you brought first, and then you can give an example. So when people are calling God Baal, they're not talking to God the Father. They're committing idolatry. So they were not speaking to Yahweh. So Yahweh is telling them, I'm God. You will no longer refer to God as Baal. So that's not abrogation. Abrogation is taking a verse out or forgetting it and then it being replaced with something like it or better. And that's according to your sources.
Okay, perfect. That's exactly why I was going to tie to Isaiah 56, right? So Isaiah 56, God is speaking to his people, and he says explicitly that I will give you guys a name better than sons and daughters, right? So let me ask you, what is the name better than sons and daughters that Isaiah 56 is speaking?
It sure as hell not slave. Because Quran 1993 says that we come to Allah as a slave or a servant. So if you are giving me a name that is better than sons and daughters, it's sure as hell not a slave. Because that is a degradation, or that is a retrogression That is a devalue of sons and daughters. So if God is going to give the people of Israel a different name that is better than sons and daughters, it's sure as hell not a slave.
How is that relevant? I'm asking.
Because
hold on, let me finish right quick, and then I'll let you have the floor. I really want to know what this correct sense that Allah can be referred to as a father is, and if so, can Allah also be referred to as a mother?
Wow. The answer is because there is no well-established evidence that that was ever allowed. The reason why I am even granting that in a sense is because you can make a historical case that this was something that took place in the time of the children of Israel. Now,
Correct in that?
if I'm the one speaking, so if we grant that if it was correct in that specific instance, it would have been correct in that specific meaning.
In what sense?
The reason why, perfect, in the sense that creator, sustainer, the one who
creator without being a father.
Wait, hold on. The way that they were using it was in the context of a creator or a sustainer or essentially a slave and a master relationship.
Liar, liar, liar. This lady is just a liar. She's just lying for Islam. And apparently I heard that she's even being boycotted by his own people. That women are not allowed to do these things. I'm sorry for her. I feel sorry for her. I really feel she's trying for Islam, and then for some reasons, this thing still stands that women are inferior, so they're not allowed to do these things. I really feel for her. But this is a lie.
We only see any reference to that in Hosea, and he's specifically correcting that. He said, "You will no longer call me Baal." Do you know who Baal is?
Yeah, I believe that was a false god that the Canaanites worshipped, correct?
Yes, and they were a false god that they were doing sex orgies with. Do you believe that at any point in time that God, Yahweh, the Father, was okay with?
No.
Okay, so
Absolutely not.
So he never allowed for them to call him Baal.
But what does Baal mean?
You tell me.
Okay, does Baal not mean husband?
It does. But
Okay, perfect. So do you believe that
This lady is a snake. Baal means master, Lord. Those are the strong meanings of Baal. Husband is a weak meaning of Baal. So the strong meanings, the strongest meaning of a Baal that you can get is a master or Lord. But she picked the weaker meaning, which is husband. And then let's hear what she said on top of it. She just shot herself in the foot.
there was ever an instance in which that name would have been okay to have been used prior?
So she's saying there's never an instant where calling God husband was okay. So the reason why she thinks that God told them to stop calling him Baal is because the name meant husband, and God didn't want that name to be applied to God, so to be applied to him. So he said, do not call me Baal because it means husband. And it's never okay to call God husband. But that is exactly what God told the people to call him. Let's check that one out. She's just a liar. She's just a liar. She's just a liar. Let's check it out and see. Now this is it. Hosea chapter 2 verse 16. Hosea chapter 2, you can see it right here on top here. Verse 16, let's go to the verse 16 quickly and read. It says, and it shall be in that day, says the Lord, that you will call me my husband. Allah is saying the Jews should call him my husband and no longer call me master, because Baal, the strongest meaning for Baal is master or Lord. Master. Yes, it also means husband, but that is a weaker meaning. But God was saying, this is what God was saying. You see, God did not ask the Jews to call him Baal in the first place. It was the Jews themselves that tried to call him Baal, because Baal means master or Lord. So God is saying, I didn't give you that name. You chose that name, and I'm rejecting it. So now the name that I'm asking you to call me, this one is God saying specifically, call me my husband. So Korra is saying, is that ever appropriate to call God husband? Well, this is what God is saying, but they should call him husband. And so I don't know how she reads the Bible, and her approach to the Bible is very, very, very poor. At least get the context and then make an argument out of the context. And so this is what God is saying. They shall no longer call me Baal. Because God doesn't want the Jews to come to him as master and slave, which is the direct opposite of what Islam is. Islam says nobody comes to Allah except as a slave or master. I think Quran chapter 90, verse 93. And so God is saying, I don't want you to come to me as a master and slave type of relationship. I want you to relate with me as a husband and wife type of relationship. God is saying this specifically. God is saying this. And the Quran says the direct opposite of it. Now, let's read the 17. For I will take from her mouth, the names of Baal. So Baal can be master, Lord. It can also be husband. God is saying the word Baal is also associated with pagan gods. So therefore, do not use the word Baal and use the word Ishi instead of Baal. Ishi means husband. So God preferred Ishi to Baal because Baal is the same name or title that was used for the pagan gods. And so God is saying, because that name was used for pagan gods and not use that name for me, so use a different name. So they use the word Ishi for God, which means husband. Now let's look at this one. She's saying that, well, God might have abrogated using the term father because of the meaning. The meaning was incorrect. The specific meaning that the Jews were using, they meant when they called God father was incorrect, and therefore God abrogated it. Now, let's check some of the verses that God Himself specifically said the Jews are supposed to relate with Him as father and sons. Let's look at this one. This first one quickly. We're going to look at 3 verses, then we're done. Exodus chapter 4, verse 22. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. God is saying Israel is His firstborn. What makes God then? That makes God father. If Israel is your firstborn, then it makes you a father. Now the next one is Hosea chapter 1, verse 10. Yes, the number of children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered, and it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there it shall be said to them, you are sons of the living God. This is God speaking. That this is your status as far as I, God, am concerned. You are my children. You are sons of God, of me. And what does that make God then? A father. Jesus Christ. The last one, Isaiah chapter 43, verse 6. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. God is calling the Jews sons and daughters. God is the one calling them that. It's not even the Jews calling God that. Do we get that? And then Islam came along and said, do not call me father. And then they had to find an escape plan around it, or an escape route around it, and say, well, not in every sense is in the sense that it's incorrect or inappropriate, when there is no record of the Jews ever calling God Father in the sense that is not appropriate. Ladies and gentlemen, would you rather come to the God, the creator of all things, as a slave, like Quran chapter 90, verse 93 says, or as a father? Would you rather God calls you His son or His daughter, or calls you His slave? I don't know about you, but I'd rather be called His son in a daughter, or a daughter and not a slave. Come to Jesus, man. Come to Christ. That is a better way to the Father. If you enjoyed what you just watched, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so that when I drop the next video, you will be the first to be notified. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.